What's our big ticket item? Upgrades, people, upgrades. That's how we make the dough. Now, if we're telling robots that no matter what they're made of, they're fine, how can we expect them to feel crummy enough about themselves to buy our upgrades and make themselves look better? Therefore, I've come up with a new slogan. Why be you when you can be new?
Hello my Broccoli people. So this is a video about why I hate shotguns and why I love jackhammers and why you should too. First off, just want to say that I will try to compare shotguns with jackhammers fairly. That being, I will go over some of their core mechanics and talk about why I think the jackhammer's core mechanics are far superior and far more interesting and fun, far more effective than any of the shotgun's mechanics. So something that probably crossed everyone's mind almost immediately is shotgun swapping. Let's take a Cerberus here. Shotgun. Right. That's 22 health melted relatively quickly with just one shotgun. Cool. Jackhammer can do that too, actually. Little known fact, the jackhammer can be swapped for more damage. Right? So instead of having to deal with this long cooldown, you can just, if you're not bad like me, right? Now there's also shotgun parrying, right? That's something that probably crossed everyone's mind. You can parry a melee attack. Yeah, let's use a virtue. Parry a melee attack with a shotgun. Right? As if it were a feedbacker. That's a fine and dandy, but you know, you can also do that with the jackhammer. Albeit slightly more effectively if you hit yellow. Sometimes even two. But to round it all off, there's also projectile boosting. Now, granted, I have no weapon cooldown on, so it looks something more like this. Right? With the feedbacker cooldown cycling in for a hit. Now that's something that the jackhammer can't do, right? Can't projectile boost. Projectile boosting's main strengths being the fact that it's explosion, so it's AoE. It's also from range, right? So it's a projectile from a distance. And it's also slightly more damage from a shotgun. Now, just to quickly myth bust something, a lot of people seem to believe that since the shotgun has all those pellets around it, you only parry the one projectile, right? So one projectile becomes red, and that is the exploding projectile. Something that people don't know is that all the pellets surrounding that parry actually don't come into effect really ever. So every pellet does 0.25 damage, that's a quarter damage. For instance, Filth have 0.5 health, so it would take 2 pellets to kill 1 Filth. Now, a lot of people seem to think that all of the surrounding pellets will add to the damage of the explosion by subsequently hitting the enemy that you're targeting, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. If you can pay any attention, you'll see that the projectiles actually fly away from the explosion. And more often towards you, because the projectile you parry is actually faster than the rest of the projectiles. So you really don't get any value from the other pellets. Normally a projectile boost will do 3.5 damage, and that's just it. It won't deal any more damage than that. So all of the additional pellets aren't really effective. Now projectile boosting does come at some weaknesses as well. Since it's an explosion, if you use it at point blank range, you will damage yourself more often than you will get any value from healing. So that's a big negative. Additionally, projectile boosting uses the feedbacker, which has a cooldown depending on how many times you use it in rapid succession. So in the bottom left corner there, you'll see that I am limited in my punching ability due to how much I'm using it, and that's very evident when you projectile boost. You can't projectile boost very easily because of the limit on the feedbacker. Additionally, due to that fact, it'll hinder your ability to parry projectiles which will heal you to full and give you full stamina whenever you do, and give you a lot of style. So all those things taken into account, you do sacrifice a bit of your ability to parry by projectile boosting. Now the trade-off, because the jackhammer cannot projectile boost, is the fact that the jackhammer has hit stop mechanics. So during that long pause of hit stop, you can actually use the jackhammer to do certain things depending on the variant of the jackhammer. So this is especially evident with the pump charge. The Cerberus currently has 12 health, and if I were to hit him again with a red gauge, so that red gauge that deals 10 damage and puts it on cooldown, it wouldn't be able to kill him. However, you are able to add a pump to the pump charge jackhammer during the hit stop, which would kill the Cerberus. And since we're on the subject of the red gauge, the maximum 10 damage of the jackhammer, unlike the shotgun, gets put on a cooldown when it's used too excessively, which can be a weakness, but the shotgun in any way cannot reach 10 damage quite the same way a jackhammer can. Any jackhammer user worth their salt is going to be aiming to manipulate their speed to always hit the yellow gauge so that they can deal 6 damage without putting the jackhammer on cooldown, allowing the jackhammer to be used repeatedly. Now there is one shotgun that can reach 10 damage, that being the pump charge shotgun. So everyone knows, reaching a max pump deals a big explosion around you, deals damage to you as well, and deals 10 damage, more importantly. That's enough to kill a Virtue, which is very strong, right? Anyone can argue that killing a Virtue in one hit is extremely effective considering how many spawn and how annoying they are on, say, the Cyber Grand. But one thing you do have to take into account is that though it is an explosion, and you can theoretically deal 10 damage to multiple enemies, more often than not, that won't be the case, because there is a mechanic in the game called explosion falloff, right? So, depending on the radius of the explosion, there will be less damage dealt to enemies further out. Theoretically, that Virtue should die because it will be in range of its attack, but it won't, and it will receive a fraction of the damage that that Virtue was dealt. Here's another example with Swords Machines. This Swords Machine took the full brunt of the damage, whereas this Swords Machine took a fraction of the damage. However, this does highlight one of the pump charge shotgun's greatest strengths, that being how fast it is to pump the shotgun. That's relatively fast compared to the jackhammer. However, if we factor in hit stop rules, the times actually equalize more than you think. Due to how the hit stop rules function, you can actually pump during the hit stop to shorten the time by a large margin. All of this goes to help the jackhammer, while, of course, it does also deal the 6 to 10 damage that you get from getting yellow or red gauge at the same time, instead of being hindered by just the explosion itself. Instead of being hindered by the fact that the pump charge shotgun is limited to just the explosion and can't make use of the pellets. One final thing, adding a single pump to the pump charge jackhammer will add an additional 3.5 damage explosion around it, whereas adding one more pump to the pump charge shotgun only adds 1.5 damage or 6 pellets to the shot. Additionally, adding one pump to the pump charge jackhammer adds 3.5 damage and an explosion around your target, and that can be applied during the hit stop instead of having to pump it before attacking your target, like so. Comparing that to the pump charge shotgun, you have to add your pump before you hit your target, and then approach them to deal much less damage. Adding one pump to the pump charge shotgun only adds 1.5 damage or 6 pellets to the shot. Moving on to the Sawdon, while there is a little bit less to say, there are still mechanics that differ between the jackhammer and the shotgun. Immediately the shotgun defenders are crying, well, you can projectile boost while you release the chainsaw. And that's pretty effective. That deals 3.5 damage with an explosion, and 4.5 damage going out with just a chainsaw. However, the Sawdon jackhammer has a mechanic that allows it to deal more damage than just projectile boosting with a chainsaw. Because you can charge the jackhammer and the chainsaw at different intervals, you could add them into the same combo at the same time to deal much more damage. Hitting a yellow gauge with a jackhammer or even a red gauge will deal 6 damage on yellow and 10 on red, which is far more damage than a measly projectile boost. As well, factoring in the chainsaw, you get that bonus 4.5 damage at least going out. And because you aren't projectile boosting, you can use your feedbacker or your knuckle blaster to add extra damage to your target. Additionally, one of the weaknesses of projectile boosting while charging the chainsaw is that you actually lose out on the important heal factor that the chainsaw gives you due to the explosion blasting you back from your heal. However, that's not something that you can say for the jackhammer, which actually does get a lot of value. One of the distinguishing features about a jackhammer is that it will usually garner you 35 healing upon attacking your target, similar to the shotgun. However, it will only do this once, which can be a weakness and can be a strength as the healing is very consistent, but you don't usually get more than just 35. With the sawed-on jackhammer, however, because you aren't projectile boosting and that explosion isn't damaging you or launching you away from your target, you can actually heal off of your target and damage them for that 35 healing at the same time, effectively healing you to full. Finally, with slightly more substance, there is the core eject shotgun. Now, one of the main appeals of the core eject shotgun is that you can fire cores at practically no cooldown. Like so, which can lead to very easy core snipes. This can be made easier by shooting a coin. While this is moderately effective, dealing 7 damage in a large explosion, it does cost you a coin if you're trying to use it in the heat of combat. As well, there are a lot of factors that can bounce you around and cause you to miss your coin or miss your core. However, the core eject jackhammer doesn't require any coins, and it can deal the same amount of damage nearly instantaneously without any setup. Also, it's hit scan. Now, the core eject jackhammer actually has a lot of hit stop mechanics incorporated into it. One of them being, if you feel you're going to miss your core, say the target wasn't where my crosshair was, during the hit stop I can redirect the core to where I would prefer it to be. This, of course, comes without the need of using a pistol or a coin to activate your cores. All of the value that you get with the core eject jackhammer is completely self-contained within one weapon. Just for fun, I'll show you another core eject jackhammer hit stop mechanic that can be used very easily, very consistently, and deals far more damage than any core snipe or regular core damage. That combo right there deals the same damage as a yellow gauge, which deals 6 damage, and the 7 damage you get from striking the core with the hammer. Yes, that adds up to 13 damage. And that's without hitting a red gauge, which can add up to 17 damage. Let's just say the core eject shotgun won't be seeing any numbers like this. That is, of course, unless you inquire about core nuking. One of the strengths of the core eject shotgun is the fact that you can core nuke from a distance. A lot of people will also say it's very hard, if not impossible, to get a core nuke with the core eject jackhammer. However, it can't be furthest from the truth. Due to the fact that the core will follow your velocity, it seems like you can't aim your core where you would like to do a core nuke. However, that is one of the best features of using the core eject jackhammer. Because the core starts on top of you, you can actually get a very easy core nuke. Now you might argue, that just did 50 damage to you. And while that's true, you can simply dash through the explosion. Doing so will occlude all damage and will deflect all projectiles that were originally aimed at you towards their senders, thanks to the nature of the core nuke starting on your position. And that's all without mentioning the fact that because the core eject jackhammer fires a hit scan, it can hit coins, and it can detonate cores on top of rockets, it can detonate rockets on top of cores. All good things that the core eject shotgun simply can't do. All in all, the only shotgun that I believe can even attest to the strength of a jackhammer would be the pump charge. Now, anyone that's been a frequent viewer of the Brocolite channel knows that I love our comment section. Please feel free to add any comments you feel, leave any arguments you have for the shotgun, mention any more things I didn't mention in this about the jackhammer, and most importantly, spread this propaganda to as many people as possible. Let the world know how strong the jackhammer is compared to the shotgun, how much more fun it is, how much deeper it is, and step on the toes of any soul who continues to defend a shotgun from this point on. That being said, I'm going to continue to play this game without the help of the shotgun, and I hope you do too. This has been my rant. Have a good day.